for Nocode HQ, and in today's short tutorial I'm going to show you how to integrate an external API into your Bubble application basically, and therefore display some external data in your application for your users, and this allows you to basically extend your Bubble application above all into all the basically in all domains, and you can integrate data, send data off, and yeah, what we're gonna do, we're gonna build a very simple random meal or random receipt generator, where it's kind of gonna be a simple web app where the user can or gets a random meal, and he can generate a new meal every time by clicking a button. And we're going to do this by using the free API, the mealdb.com, and I'm going to show you in a few minutes how to get the data here. But let's go back to Bubble actually. So you just need a Bubble account, and we're going to create a new app together. So I'm going to call this meal API demo, okay? And I'm going to leave all the other fields here blank. So let's click on create a new app, and we'll be brought into the Bubble application editor, and we'll be greeted with the application assistant, which we don't need in this case. So I'm just going to start with a blank page here. Okay, I'm going to close the assistant, and I'm going to go ahead and start, first of all, designing the application. So let me just change the width of the page so it's easier to work with, okay? And let's actually also change the background style to a nice gradient maybe, with like a bluish gradient. Let's take a look like this maybe. Okay. Yeah, that looks quite nice. And let's also decrease the height. We don't need that much space. And I'm going to just add a text here at the top. And this text is going to say random meal generator app. Okay, so this is going to be the app we're going to be building. So let me just center that, increase the size maybe, and make that white. Okay, great. So I'm going to keep things really simple regarding the design. That's not going to be the focus of this tutorial. But what we're going to do, we're going to just implement this data here from an external source. In this case, this is the mealdb.com API, which you can use. You can use some endpoints here for free. And you can integrate basically an external API into your Bubble application without having too much knowledge about APIs. Of course, it's helpful and useful if you know about APIs and how APIs work, but in most cases you can just follow the basic instructions here. And if you don't want to do something too complex, you should be able to integrate into your Bubble application without any knowledge. So as you can see, this meal database API allows you to search a meal by name, okay? It allows you to list all meals by first letter, look up the full meal details by ID, and look up a single random meal, okay? And we're gonna start off with this endpoint because that's probably the most simple one. And what you wanna do, you just wanna copy this URL here. So this is gonna be the API endpoint. And let's just paste that actually in a new tab. So I'm gonna paste that. And as you can see, entering that will give us this weird just text structure here containing a lot of information but not in a really nice format. But what it does, it gives us a random basically meal, okay, so a random meals generator, and if I just click or hold Control and R, so refresh the page, a new meal is brought to us. So every time a random meal is displayed, and we're going to use this for our Bubble application now. So I'm just going to go back here to Bubble. And what you always need to integrate an external API is the plugin, which is called API Connector by Bubble. Okay, so the API Connector, you want to install that, and this allows you basically to add your own APIs, configure them, and then use them within your Bubble application. So let's start off by adding another API here. I'm going to call this meal, okay, or meal database, whatever. Okay, we won't need any authentication. That's an important thing you have to know. In this case, I chose an API without authentication, but in many cases, you will need to kind of sign up with the service that's offering it, and they will require some sort of authentication for your API calls. And usually that's a header with a key and a value where you add your API key, but that always depends on the service offering the API. We have a few other tutorials where we use a API key, but that shouldn't be too hard to implement. But as I mentioned already, we don't need an API key for this tutorial, so let's create a new call here. I'm going to expand that field, and we're going to call this one here random meal. Okay, so this is going to be our random meal call, and this is of type get because we're gonna get data, okay? There's a few other things you can do with APIs. Again, I won't go into too much detail here now, but probably the most important ones is get and post. And get basically means you're getting just data from a source, and post means you're kind of sending data over. It's in really simple terms, but yeah, that should give you an overview of what these terms mean. But we're gonna stay with get, and I'm just gonna paste the URL I copied before, which is the endpoint, so the mealdatabase.com, so on, random. Okay, so this is gonna give us a random meal. We're going to use this as data, okay? So whatever is basically whatever is returned here, we're going to use this as data and not as an element action, okay? And the data type is going to be JSON, that is correct, okay? And that's basically it. What we have to do now, we have to initialize the call, and this will allow us to map the fields which are returned. So this weird text structure I showed you before, two different fields basically, or to a nice structure within our Bubble application. Bubble is quite smart in recognizing the data which is returned. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on initialize call. Okay, and as you can see, Bubble says, okay, return values random meal. So we returned a meals list, so a list of meals, and each meal consists of an ID, whatever this is, I think that's the name, okay, the category, the area, the instructions, the thumbnail of the meal, a YouTube video, and a list of ingredients, the measure, so basically the receipt, okay, and you can now manually map all these fields, so you can say, okay, the ID meal is of type number, the category is of type text, and so on. But actually, I'm going to leave everything as text because text is the least prone to errors, I would say. And if this is a number or a text, doesn't really make a difference for us. So I'm just going to click Save. And now we have access to this data basically within our Bubble application. And we're going to go ahead and start building this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to choose a group here. Okay, I'm going to display that group here in the middle of the application. Let's center that. Let's remove the style here. Let's maybe add a nice shadow and the roundness maybe like 15. Okay, and I'm going to rename this group here meals. Okay, or random meals. Random meals. Okay, and this is going to be of type of content random meals meal. Okay, and the data source is going to be to get data from an external API. And now we have one API inserted here, or one API choice, because we just created that in our plugins tab, which is our meal database, I misspelled that, random meal, okay? And what we're gonna have here is a data source, meal database, random meal, meal, okay? Is it this one? No, random meals. Yeah, let's just take the first item, okay? And, or random item, sorry, random item, okay? So we're now getting, using our data source, the meal database call, we're getting a random meal from this list, which is returned, and we can now access the data basically returned by this call within this group. So for example, I'm just going to search for image here, and I'm going to display an image here, and let's actually make it a bit smaller, and center that, and I'm going to say, okay, this is going to be a dynamic image. It's going to be the parent group's random meal thumbnail. And that's basically it. As we have, this group now has a data type, we have access to the parent group's meal basically, and can use all this data and display this within this group, okay? So I'm gonna do the same thing for the name of the meal, so I'm just gonna add a text here, and this is gonna be the parent group's meal. This is the title, I think, okay? So let's remove the style here, make that a bit bigger, like this, 20. I'm gonna add another text, and this text is going to say, okay, this is the parent group's meal instructions. Okay, so we're going to add a text before that, instructions, like this, and center that as well. I'm just going to copy this text as well. And this is going to be, let's have the, what else? The category maybe. So if it's vegetarian, whatever. So that's the meal category. Okay. Okay, and I also want to add a link to the original receipt. So let's add a link here at the bottom, and we're going to say, okay, this is going to say view this receipt or view this meal receipt, okay, and it's going to link to an external URL, which is going to be the parent group's random meal, where was it? The source, okay, and we want to open it in a new tab. I want to just remove the style here, center that again, make that bold and a bit bigger. Okay, and let's center that. And now we should have a nice kind of meal card here displayed. But what I also want to do, I want to allow the user to generate a new random meal. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to display a button here. Okay. And let's change the style of this button. Let's make that maybe orange, so it's a complementary color like this. Great. And I'm going to say, okay, generate new meal. Okay, so when this button is clicked, the user should get a new meal card here, which is going to be displayed. So let's define what should happen. So if this is clicked, we want to start at a workflow. And what we want to do, we want to display data in a group. The group we want to display data in is our random meals group, and the data to display is going to be get data from external API again, API provider meal database, and we want to get meals random item again. Okay, and that's basically it. So every time a user clicks this button, a new meal here will be generated, and the new information will be displayed. Let me just add a maximum width here to this group, and we should be. And one small thing I have to change here, a small mistake I made. What we're doing here now is getting a random item, but we actually don't have to do that because I want to change the type of content actually, because we're already getting a random meal using this API call. So they return a random meal. We don't have to do that within Bubble. So I'm just going to change the type of content here to random meal. I'm going to delete all of this. And we just need the meal database random meal. We just have to change all these fields here again. So this is going to be again parent groups random meal thumbnail. Okay. Okay, this is going to be the parent group's random meal. What is it? The name. This is going to be the instructions. Parent group's random meal instructions. So instructions. This is going to be the category. And this is going to be the link. So parent group's random meal source here. Okay. Where is it? Source. And same thing here under workflow. We have to say, okay, when the button generate new meal is clicked, display data and random meals. So just delete all of this here. We just need the random meal basically. Okay, so let's go ahead and preview our application. Everything should work out now. So great. So as you can see, it already works. We have this card here, basically this receipt card with our first meal displayed. So the Kalalu Jamaican style, whatever this is, the image, the instructions of how to serve this. We have the meal category, which in this case is miscellaneous, okay? And we also have the ability to view this meal receipt. So if I click that, the URL of the meal will be shown, okay? And let's also go ahead and generate a new meal. So I'm going to click that. And as you can see, a new meal is displayed here. In this case, our salted caramel cheesecake, which looks really nice. We have the instructions again, the meal category, which is dessert, and the ability to view this meal receipt. And yeah, we have basically created a really nice receipt app, and that basically shows you the power of external APIs. Instead of creating your own receipt database, which could take forever, you can use this great external API to further enhance your app or application, your service, and give it just a nicer user experience for your users without creating your own receipt database in this case. And we have created a nice, basically, receipt generator using the meal database API. But what I want to do as well, instead of just creating this random meal generator app, I also want to give the users the ability to search for a meal, basically. And we're going to do this by using the search meal by name endpoint. Okay, so it's going to be quite similar. Okay, and we're just going to copy this endpoint here again. As you can see, at the end there's the search string, which is S, and then the name of whatever the search string is. But I'm going to show you how to implement that into your Bubble application. So let's just go back to our application here. I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to call this one search, and let's actually clone that from our index page, okay? And I want to just rename the text title here, so I'm going to call this search for meal. Let's remove the button, okay? And what we're actually going to do now, we're going to first of all go to plugins, and we're going to add another call here. And this is going to be not random meal, but this is going to be search for meal, okay? and we're going to get data from this endpoint here. However, we're not going to search for arrabbiata every time, but we're going to use a parameter. And the parameter just allows you to enter a dynamic piece of data, basically. So I'm going to add square brackets here, okay? Enter the parameter name, which I'm just going to call meal. And now you can add a custom value here every time, basically. So just for testing purposes, we're going to enter arrabbiata again, okay? And I'm going to initialize the call. And what Bubble will show you, okay, so again, we get returned values, which is a search for meal, and we'll return the meal, which is the result for the search, in this case, spicy arrabbiata penne, okay? So same thing again here, I'm just gonna click save, okay? And now we can use this API call again. So I'm gonna go back to design, and what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna change things a bit. So I'm gonna delete this group, okay? And I'm gonna add a repeating group now. And let's just display that here, okay? And this repeating group will be of type of content, search for meal, okay? The data source will be do a search for, or sorry, not do a search for, it will be get data from an external API, search for a meal. And now we have this path here, as you can see, which is the search term we're using, okay? But I'm not gonna use that yet, so what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna add an input here to the top. Okay, let's drag that here. And this input is gonna, let's just change the font size, I don't like that, so let's change that to Arial. Arial, and the placeholder is gonna be enter the search term for the meal you are looking for, okay? And now we can say, okay, this should be, the path basically should be the input, enter the search terms, value. So now we're gonna use a dynamic value in our API call basically. And we can say, okay, we need to search for meal, and we're going to do a meal database, search for meal, where the meal we're searching for is the inputs value basically, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to center the repeating group here. I'm going to actually, yeah, let's actually add a group within that. So I'm just going to add a group here like this. And this group will of course be, let's just have the type of content search for meal and the current cell search for meal, and now we have access to the data. I'm going to keep things quite simple, so just the title here maybe, which is the parent group's meal name, and we're going to have the link here beneath that like this, which is an external URL, the parent group's meal source, okay, and just the link is going to be called visit. And what we can also do is just add the thumbnail again if you want to do that. So a small image here next to this, and this is going to be dynamic again. Let me just center that vertically. Dynamic image, parent groups, search for meal, date, no, not date modified, sorry. What is it? The thumbnail here, great. And let me remove the separato. Let's apply a maximum width to this repeating group, and we should be good to go. So let's just preview that, okay? And let's go ahead and search for a meal. As you can see, we have the default spicy arrabbiata penne, but what I want to do, I want to search for a new meal. I want to search for cake, okay? Awesome. As you can see, our dynamic search works. I just entered the keyword cake here, and we're doing basically a dynamic search within the database of the meal database using their API, and we're displayed a list of all recipes and meals containing the word cake. As you can see, we have pancakes, rock cakes, carrot cake, and so on and so forth. And the search was quite fast, as you can see. Sorry, and let me just preview that again. For example, let me just enter, I don't know, chicken, okay? And again, we have chicken handy, chicken karage, and all these meals here, and basically there's almost this infinite list of receipts containing the word chicken. And again, as always, we can take a look at the receipt URL. So chicken and mushroom hot pot will bring us to the page, okay? I'm just gonna go back here. And yeah, we created basically a dynamic search for meals in our Bubble application without actually having the data in our database, but we're using an external API, using the value of this input as a dynamic parameter, and then displaying the results of this API within our native repeating group. So as you saw, quite simple, but really, really effective. I mean, it's quite a useful application now which we created here, and your users will be able to search for receipts. And of course, that's just one of the many use cases. There's so many APIs for so many services. Almost all big companies or websites or apps offer an API which you can use for many other use cases. And yeah, so again, let me just enter a random value here. So I'm going to search for tiramisu, maybe like this. Okay, they don't have tiramisu, but let's search for pizza. Okay, and okay, they also don't have pizza, so let's search for and here they have a few receipts now. So they have apple tarts, apple and blackberry crumble, and so on. So as you can see, it works really nicely. We've created a meal search and also a random meal generator. And what I did, I created these small groups here, but what you also can do, of course, you could just like enlarge this group here now and add more information as before, so the instructions and category, meal type, and so on. You could even embed the YouTube video, because if you might remember, we also get a YouTube video here, a video as the source here, the YouTube, which you could also embed. But yeah, I'm going to leave it as is right now. I hope you learned something in this tutorial and are ready now to integrate external APIs into your Bubble application. So I'm going to see you guys for the next tutorial with Nocode HQ. Bye.